Hey everybody, Brian Beckcom here. I got my good friend, a very, very close friend of mine, somebody I've known for over 25 years, Toby Flinn on the podcast. Toby, it's great to see you, man. How you doing?
Good, Brian. Really good to see you. Thanks for having me.
You got it, man. Well, I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that of all my friends and all the people I've met, I've always kind of looked up to you in a way because you've always been not only a leader, uh, but both in terms of being in the Marine Corps and fighting for our country and stuff. But you're a philosopher of sorts. You're a really smart guy, and I've always really paid attention to what you've said because I've thought that you just have a really, really good way of looking at the world. But tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
You bet. Born and raised in San Antonio, so went to Texas A&M after high school. So left for college and didn't come back to San Antonio to live until about 3 years ago.
Tell us about after college, but before the Marine Corps, kind of what you were doing during that time.
Yeah. So went straight into the workforce, paid off my school. That was my key priority, was get stable.
Yeah.
So I had to be self-sufficient. That was my number one goal. So there was just so much that I wanted to see in the world, and was single at the time. I was being very, I guess it was a time of kind of my formative years, after college, where you kind of grow up and you're not distracted by all the social options that you have. But before I started this trip, there was a couple key things that I really kind of wrote down for myself. I said, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to go party. This isn't kind of a last hurrah before I get married or kind of a younger midlife crisis. And that was important to me because I wanted to make sure that I got all of it that I could out of it. I originally had a very audacious, I had a plan that was to go around the world, but I kind of slimmed it down a little bit. But it started off going to be a river guide in Oregon. They hired me, the first day, and they said, okay, you'll be staying in this house up in the hills in Oregon. I said, great, this sounds wonderful. I walk in the house and, the first thing I see is all sorts of drug paraphernalia, marijuana. That night was a rough night because I thought, I think I'm going to have to leave. I'm going to have to kind of give up on this. I can't, this isn't why I decided to do this. It was kind of, and I don't think I could have articulated it so well then, but I was really kind of, looking at the contemplative life, finding truth in those things, although I don't think I could have said it as clearly then. But so I had to get up the next morning and leave. So I went to Seattle, and I decided I'm going to go to Alaska. I really want to see Alaska. I looked at the map, and Alaska is like 3,000 miles away from Seattle driving. Once I say, well, that's going to be tough, and it's the Yukon Trail, and I didn't know if my truck was up for it. So then I decided I'm going to go find my friend Casey, who was living in Los Gatos, California, the Cats.
Yep.
And ended up staying with them for, I think, about 3 months. Took a waiter job, and then after that it was a big figure eight. And I had got some interesting stories of waking up in Yellowstone with a moose with his head in my window, and I didn't stay in one hotel. My goal was not one hotel.
Really?
So
and how long were you doing this?
I think I was on the road for 9 months, and I'll never forget, Brian. I was in D.C. at the monument, seeing the Smithsonian, and it's like, when you've exercised or you've done something and you hit a wall, yeah. Like it's something that you can't explain. It's both physical and mental. It's your body just says you're done. And it wasn't that I was physically tired, but I was done. It was like Forrest Gump when he just stops running. I'm done.
What a great way to put it.
Yeah. And I headed back to Texas.
This is really a little bit of an Into the Wild story. I mean, a little bit. I mean, you take a figure eight, Northwest, Canada, California, Montana, and you didn't stay in a hotel once in 9 months.
Once.
Where were you staying?
Either basically in the parks, in the park systems. It was difficult sometimes. It wasn't as romantic as it sounded, but it definitely made me pretty, I guess, tough, because there was times where I was thinking, this is ridiculous. What am I doing? Get back to work like everybody else is.
So there's a long tradition in literature, in religion, and spiritual traditions generally, of basically taking a trip or a journey? For instance, Jesus goes away for 40 days, I think, in the wilderness. That would be one very prominent example. So during this time, this 9 months when you're traveling the country and sleeping in parks, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you doing? Like, what's going through your mind?
It's kind of the man in the cave story from Plato, right? So, you know, the guy that leaves the one prisoner who breaks free of his shackles, he breaks free, and he, you know, the images that he saw his whole life were just shadows.
Shadows on the cave. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, he thought that was reality. He gets away, he breaks through, and he walks by, and he sees kind of the puppeteers on the ground, and then he goes out and he sees the sun, and you know, that's reality. So, you know, I think that's kind of going back to what you were saying, which is today. Let's face it, it's the Bilbo Baggins, you know, it's the Epic of Gilgamesh, you know, it's those kind of going out. And some people are kind of called to go out, some people are pulled out. I was definitely pulled out of that. And I think it was, you know, I could say things like to find yourself, but I think it was to get away from just everything and see what was I made of.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to get away and be on my own and say, what is Toby really like?
Yeah. Did you use that opportunity to kind of maybe get some clarity on what you wanted to do? Or was it more like I just don't know what I want to do right now, so I'm going to go travel the country?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I think it was all of those, Brian. I remember the first day or 2 days leaving all my stuff in storage going, this is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy. You know, after the adrenaline rush goes of I'm breaking free from the corporate America. I remember thinking, this is a terrible idea. What have I done? I've given up everything. But I mean, to answer your question simply, certainly to find myself. Like, who am I? What do I want to do? And you know, at that age, what you do for a living is very important, right? I mean, that's less important, I think, now in our lives. It's still important. But I think at that age, I was really trying to think, what am I? Like, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And so, I stumbled across some ideas. You know, in fact, you know, in the spiritual life, I really thought hard about a vocation to the priesthood. And I really pursued that, ended up finding that was not the path for me. And so that was great. You know, there were some great learning points in that. But going back to what you're saying, finding space where there's no noise is so difficult today. It's not fashionable to do that. We don't actually want to do that, right? We choose not to do that. If you have a moment, what are you doing? You're not closing your eyes.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I started meditating a little less than 10 years ago, and there's a famous saying, I forget right now who said it, but they said the most problems with the human race can be traced to the inability of man to sit in a room by himself for 10 minutes, right? So you're on your journey, and you're 9 months into this journey, and you're in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, right.
And like Forrest, like you said, you just stopped running.
Stopped running.
What was it that caused you to stop running?
You know, it's fun. I'd say it's kind of like being on a long bike ride or run. You don't know what it was, but your soul is done.
Yeah.
Like for you, somebody else could have gone longer or shorter, but for you, it was done. And I think and I'd love to say that all my questions were answered. You know, I got it. I know who I am now.
Eureka!
I'm going to do this, and this for the rest of my life. But, you know, I'd say that, you know, I took a big risk doing that, right? Because nobody was doing that. In fact, a lot of people said this is a terrible idea. To answer your question simply, there isn't anything I can point to why I stopped. But I think I guess if I could say it, you know, in my mind and soul, is I got what I needed.